Obviously, I was born male. I'm not pretending to be a biological female because that's virtually impossible. I would identify myself more in the First Amendment auditing community and just loving freedom and proud to be an American. Hi, how's it going?
Great to finally meet you.
You as well. Nice to meet you too.
Thanks for coming out today.
For sure.
So can you tell me a little bit about yourself, like who you are and what you do on YouTube?
Of course, yeah. Well, my name's Chris. I do what is called First Amendment Audits on YouTube. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, and my channel is called First Amendment Rights.
Awesome. And what is a First Amendment audit?
First Amendment audit is basically people that go into like government-run establishments. Originally they were city halls, police departments, post offices, to hold government employees, city officials accountable, to test their right to record freely in public spaces, along with getting the Freedom of Information Act requests, maybe to find out salaries of the employees and that sort. What I do a mix of those as well as sidewalk audits. So I branch out, to like untraditional locations, like maybe fast food drive-throughs. Sundays I'll go to houses of worship and test my right there, when it's the freedom of religion versus freedom of press, to see if it'll peacefully coexist. And I always hope for the best possible outcome, but you never know what happens.
Can you read to me the First Amendment?
Of course, happy to. The First Amendment: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances.
So tell me how that applies to your work. Like which part of the First Amendment you just read applies, and how are you testing those boundaries?
There are multiple aspects. The first one would be, first and foremost, I would say, is freedom of press to document freely in a public space and to disseminate it to my audience. The next one would be, I would say, assembling on a public sidewalk, because sometimes there's myself along with another one that joins me. Freedom of speech, for sure, because I like to give the energy that I get, and sometimes when people come at me with a little hostility, I'll give it back to them, or even when the police show up, they'll, say, hey, can I get your name or ID? And then, I'll invoke my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. So there's, different aspects for sure.
Nice. And what defines someone as a member of the press?
That would be pretty much any one of us that live here in America, as far as I'm concerned. We all have that freedom. I mean, some people think of press as just mainstream media, like, the big networks, but, there's independent journalists, photographers, videographers. So, it's a right that we're all given in this country, which is beautiful.
Does everybody have the freedom of the press? Like if I just have a smartphone and start recording, am I considered press in that moment?
Of course, it's in the First Amendment. It's a fundamental right that we all have. To document, illustrate, write down whatever you can see, and disseminate it to your audience.
So I don't need to have like official news credentials to be considered a member of the press.
No, the news credentials, to my knowledge, are only issued by that news organization to get those reporters into like press events, for like, celebrity red carpets or into like political venues. But ultimately we all have the right to disseminate information to our fellow citizens.
So there's no such thing as being like a government accredited member of the press. There is no like formal standard for what is defined as a member of the press.
Not that I've heard of, no. That would be news to me.
Awesome. And have people used that argument against you to try to shoot you down? Like, oh, where are your credentials? You're not a member of the press.
Yeah, for sure. I've gotten that. Yeah. And I try to explain to them, different situations vary. They say, oh, well, you're not press. You're just someone uploading to YouTube. I say, well, hey, you'll find major network news on YouTube as well. So it's like, news is different to everybody, locally, so it all varies.
Totally. And what other approaches have people taken to stop you from recording in public spaces?
Oh, I've had people come up, put their hand over my lens. I've been pushed, I've been shoved. I had my camera broken once. I've had people call the police on me and, the others that I'm with. And so it's a wide range, really.
In those moments, have you feared for your safety?
The adrenaline gets going for sure. Yeah, the heart gets beating a little faster, but then I take a breath and kind of step back and be okay. I've done this 500 times now.
And when you have those moments of hostility, I know that could probably like linger on that night or the rest of the day or maybe the weekend. What motivates you to keep doing these?
Just the beauty of the freedom that we have, because it's like every day's a new day. And I like to get out and I've been venturing out a little further than Orange County. I'll go up to LA, get to see new areas, new places. That's always exciting and an adventure in itself.
Very cool. And I want to paint like an alternative world where First Amendment audits and auditors don't exist. What would that world look like? Like, are we losing anything if First Amendment auditors aren't able to do what they're able to do?
I see it as a form of like civil rights activism. I mean, I think we would lose some aspect of that, bringing that awareness to the public. It's not so much bringing the awareness all the time to the people that are there directly in front of the camera. It's the audience that sees it on YouTube or social media, because it could be anywhere from 10,000 people to upwards over 250,000 that could see a video. For myself, I know there's other channels that have a bigger audience than I do, of course. So, but I think just that bringing that awareness to people is mainly important.
Awesome. And I want to go a little bit more into how an audit looks like step by step. Is there like a pass-fail scenario? Like what's the process of an audit?
Well, for myself, I can't speak for anybody else, obviously, but I would give a pass to a location if I don't hear any threats of police being called, if I don't hear anyone directly saying, oh, you need to leave or stop what you're doing, because then to me, that's infringing on what I'm doing. People are sometimes curious, and hey, that's fine. We all can be curious, but then at the end of the day, I say if you escalate it further beyond that, that's when I have the problem with it. And so, I like to share the past videos, especially with houses of worship where I've been invited inside, so it's like an added bonus. And I know some channels don't show those kind of things because, they obviously don't get the views, but it's like, it's not always about that.
Why don't those ones get the views, like the positive encounters?
I think just realistically, people sometimes like to see drama. In all honesty, yeah.
Can you take me in a moment, or like take me back to a moment of one of those dramas, like maybe one of the most viewed encounters you've had, or maybe one of the more aggressive ones? Like, give me a story on the extremes.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, I'll start with a pass. There was probably about a year and a half ago, I went to a church down in South Orange County, Laguna Beach, I think it was. And the first thing out of one of the parishioners' mouths was, hey, would you like to come inside? And then, of course, we ask with permission, can we come in with the cameras, maybe between services? And they say, sure, come on in. So it's like, because we like to see the different stained glass windows and the decor inside. And then once, if that happens, then I'll go in and, I'll be sure to mute out any conversations, because then we're inside private property, not out in the open. And then, sometimes I'll put music over it to enhance it a bit. On the flip side of that, the more aggressive one was probably last fall, about a year ago, September 2023. I was documenting outside like an industrial business. Two of the shop owners came out. Ultimately, I had my camera broken. The viewfinder was ripped off, and they accused me seemingly that I'd broken into their property before, or they said something to the extent that we've had vandalism here and theft. And I said, well, it wasn't me. So then, he came at me and, unfortunately had some damage done to my property.
Wow.
Yeah. Had to call the police, and I was out there for about half hour, 45 minutes, filed a report, and yeah.
What were the repercussions from that?
Well, I got a copy of the police report. Unfortunately, I can't give out any information from that for confidentiality reasons. But I'll probably have to take actions into my own hands, maybe small claims if I want to proceed.
Tell me a little bit about your identity and how that factors into what you're doing.
My identity, like as far as being like trans, or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
If you're comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I don't necessarily lump myself into the LGBT plus whatever it is nowadays community. Mainly because just from my own personal reasons, I feel there's a lot of political identity that goes into that. And I don't necessarily identify as what some would say is liberal. I don't identify as conservative. I'm more in the middle of the aisle, so I'd like to consider myself more of like an independent person to see both aspects of this, two sides to every story. I would identify myself more in the First Amendment auditing community and just loving freedom and proud to be an American, first and foremost.
I love it. As a trans individual, when you're out there on the streets, like, do people ever hurl insults at you or like use that for personal attacks?
It's happened, yeah. Sometimes I'll be, called explicit words, that, won't repeat here on camera. But, sometimes that I'd say, oh, it sounds like we got a bigot over here, and then, just, commenting on clothes I wear or that sorts of stuff.
Does it ever get to you or does it bounce off?
At first it did, when people used to say, oh, you're just a guy. It's like, well, I don't deny that I was born who I was. Obviously I was born male. I'm not pretending to be a biological female because that's virtually impossible. And I think that's where it gets clouded sometimes in the conversation. People say, oh, you think you're a woman. No, I don't think I'm a woman. I know I'm a trans female, and there's a difference between biological and trans.
And how did you come to make that decision, like at that point in your life? Was it like a revelation that you had, or had you always felt a certain way?
Oh yeah, I had these kind of feelings, and I knew something was off ever since I was maybe 5-6 years old. Goes back to way back when, and not knowing what it was, being afraid to tell my family, and just kind of kept it buried as long as I could. And probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I got myself into therapy sessions because I was dealing with some depression issues. No shame in talking about that. And worked out all the personal issues I had, and I'm in a good place right now.
Awesome, that's great to hear. I feel like it's a difficult thing to realize, maybe, or was it always clear to you that you felt more like a woman, or was there like a moment of like, oh, that's what I'm experiencing? Yeah.
Well, I think I would like when I first came out, I told my mom and family, I said at the very least I'm bi, because I've dealt with both sides, and so under that umbrella, I would say at least bi. But then it's like I felt more comfortable with the feminine aspect, and ultimately I just came to the realization that when I did some research and found out what transgender was, that I was like, okay, that seems like that's who I am.
Nice.
Yeah.
And how did your family and friends react to that? Were they supportive? Was there pushback?
Oh, there's support now, but at first it was rough between me and my mom, because my older brother passed away in 2007, and her feeling at that time, this was dating back to 2015 when I first came out, she was having a hard time because she was like, I feel like I'm losing another son. And I said, that's understandable, but at the end of the day, I'm who I am on the inside. I'm still me. It's like I look at the outer shell of myself as my vessel or my vehicle. It's like you get a paint job on your car. It's the same car, same engine inside, but it looks a little different on the outside.
Right. And back to First Amendment audits, like how have your friends and family reacted to that line of work that you do?
It's mixed. Sometimes I think to myself it was easier to come out as transgender than a First Amendment auditor. My mom and some other family members are supportive. Some other in my family took the stance that, oh, I'm harassing people out there, and I've got other family members that just prefer not to talk about it. So it's like respectful for that.
And what about the general community, like the people in the YouTube comments? Are they supportive of the work that you're doing mostly, or are there people who are also taking a similar stance that you're harassing people?
Majority are supportive, but I do get the mix of, I would call the trolls that pop up every now and then. They want to say, oh, you're harassing people, you're just out there for clicks and views. I even had one of the opposition channels that review audits and call us frauditors. exchange emails with that person. I'm not going to give their name just out of respect to their privacy, but we discussed a little bit about the clicks and views, and I addressed that, hey, I show positive videos. How come you never show positive videos on your channel? And they basically told me, oh, I wouldn't get the views if I didn't. So it's like kind of hypocrisy there.
Totally.
Yeah.
And how has this community that's like built around your work, how have they supported you? Have they supported you through encouragement, like financially, through donations?
Well, I'm proud to say that I don't ask for donations in any way. I know other channels do to help them with their road travels and their journeys, and fully respect that, to each their own. I do have the super thanks function on my channel. I don't ever encourage or mention that either. It's like, if you feel like helping me out, great. I show appreciation for that, but I feel like I want to do this as much on my own as I can.
And the income that's like generated from your channel, either through those super thanks or maybe advertising dollars, is it significant?
It can be a decent amount. It fluctuates month to month based on the views on the channel and the audience retention, all sorts of stuff like that go into it.
Do you still work another job to help supplement your lifestyle?
Oh, for sure, yeah. I have what they call a real job on the side. I got some friendly advice from another auditor. He said, don't rely on YouTube solely, because that could be, in the blink of an eye. It's not like a company that would say, we're going to review you. They could just take it away in a heartbeat. So it's good to have that other job to fall back on, just in case.
Can I ask about that line of work at all, or do you not want to like? Do you
Oh,
want to
sure. Yeah, I can touch into it. Well, I used to work at the Disneyland Resort, the graveyard shift. I did the custodial department there for 23 years.
Wow.
Hired in when California Adventure first opened, and I recently ended my employment with them in May of 2023. I had another job lined up, so I'm still in the same line of work, but it's more mainly in late afternoon to early evenings. So I'm finally off the graveyard shift, which was a killer.
And has that work ever been jeopardized by your First Amendment auditing, like what you do in your free time?
No, I really don't bring that up at my job, because I consider my auditing to be part of my outside work life from there. And it's like I learned early on when I was in management, assistant manager at a movie theater. They say, don't make friends with your employees, because you're here to do a job, and you don't want to share too much about your personal life, because that could come back and bite you in the rear end sometime.
Totally. Back to that community that's built around your channel.
Mm-hmm.
How does that make you feel? Like, does that help your confidence? Has that given you like more of a sense of purpose in what you do?
I would say so, yeah. I mean, just the support alone from people commenting, saying, hey, love what you do, or people saying, watching from, Sweden or Malaysia, across the world, to know that, this type of content is getting that big of a reach, even in countries where they don't have the traditional, constitution like we do. I mean, some have similar freedoms, but, it varies from country to country, of course. But, it's mainly supportive, and people saying, looking forward to seeing your next video, kind of thing. Yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah.
And on the opposite end of that, have you received any hate online?
Yeah, of course, yeah. I've gotten people saying that one day you're going to get what you deserve, and some people wish, physical harm on me, and I've blocked them from my channel, and reported it for what I feel is harassment, because I feel you shouldn't be making threats to anybody.
For sure not. Have any of those threats like materialized in anything, or are they just faceless trolls?
Faceless trolls right now, yeah. Thankfully, yeah.
Awesome. Have you worked with any other auditors, or is this like a solo mission for you?
I've collaborated with a few in the past. Sidewalks 22, Long Beach Observer. So there's another channel, his name's Nasty Nathaniel. He originates out of the Central Coast of California, and we've been collaborating for the last couple years, since early 2022, I believe. To me, he's a legend in what he does. He's one of the first ones out there, dating back to 2014, 2015, as far as I know, before it really became like a big movement. And Sidewalks 22, I collaborate with him, still ongoing. We started teaming up back in November of last year, and he helped me branch out to like the LA area because I was mainly focused on Orange County and the region where I live. And so I get a chance to get out and see new areas and, you know, explore new things.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
how do those collaborations change the game?
Well, everyone's got their own style. You know, I'll try my best to not speak over whoever I'm with when I'm there. Sometimes, you know, of course we want to get our point of view across, and it might happen, but I try not to do that too much if I can help it.
How does that experience, like working with someone, help support the line of work? Like, do you feel safer with someone around, like knowing that they got your back?
Oh, of course, yeah. Well, yeah, my brother always used to say, hey, safety in numbers, right? You know, because when I go out on my own, I'm sometimes looking over my shoulder to see if anyone's approaching, or looking in the rear view of my, you know, phone screen to see if anyone's walking up behind me. But it's like when you're out there with another auditor, you can cover like different angles, and if someone approaches you, hopefully they're watching what's going on, or if someone approaches them, I'll try and point my camera towards what's going on over there, and then, you know, it's an extra set of eyes basically.
Awesome. And how does your style differ from other First Amendment auditors out there?
Well, for myself, I know some auditors can be seen as instigating. I'm not gonna, you know, give any names because I don't, you know. But for myself, I try to just, you know, stand there and do my documenting. And if someone comes up to me, I'll return the energy I get. If they want to come up and say, hey, how's it going? You know, I'll return that friendly chit chat. If they come out going, first off, what are you doing? You know, I'll be like, well, what are you doing? Or what does it look like I'm doing? Oh, you have a camera, very good, you know. Start there, you know, and just see how the conversation goes.
What are some of the like negative aspects of the auditor community that you try to disassociate from?
Well, for myself, I don't carry like any pepper spray or anything like that. I've heard people, you know, suggest that I should to defend myself, but I've actually seen in other videos where an auditor's deployed pepper spray and they end up in handcuffs because the police, law enforcement on scene say it wasn't an equal exchange of force. It's like, oh, they took a swing at you or threw dirt in your face or threw water at you and you got them in the eyes with pepper spray, so now you're the one at fault.
That must be frustrating. You're just trying to defend yourself.
Yeah, I don't want to cross that road, so I've always said, hey, I'm willing to take a punch or a hit or a fall for the cause, and, you know, if I can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the person assaulted me or did something to me, then I'll go from there.
I know you're in that one situation with the court case at the shop. Has this line of work like looped you into any other legal issues, like people making charges against you?
I haven't had that yet. No, yeah. There was a church audit we did a couple of years ago where someone threatened to do a citizen's arrest on us because I wouldn't tell them what I was doing. And I was like, go right ahead, you know. You'll see when the police get here that hopefully you'll get an education if they do their job right, or a little enlightenment, you know.
Totally. And what about like film permits? Have you had any issue with that? Like either people claiming that you need a film permit to film, or ever been like ticketed for not having a permit?
Not yet. I can't say that I have had that happen. I was up in Beverly Hills back in February, and a lot of the shop merchants, the high-end stores, were trying to say, oh, you can't stand here. This is, you know, they tried to rope it off with their ropes and poles and stuff, and virtually blocked like 3/4 of the sidewalk. So I kind of challenged that and, you know, say, hey, it's an open sidewalk, and I asked them to see their permit where they could extend out onto the sidewalk, and they said, well, it's on file, you can contact the city hall for that. So it's
Why are First Amendment audits so important?
To me, I feel the importance of them is to get out there and exercise the freedoms that we have. It's like another channel, Amagansett Press, has said often, you know, our rights are like muscles, and if we don't use them, we lose them.
What would you say to the critics who say that First Amendment auditors are baiting people into arguments?
I would disagree with that, just from my perspective, because I don't initiate conversation. You know, if someone wants to approach, that's of their own free will. They have the free will to approach me or not, you know, either way. And then if they choose to engage me, then, you know, I'll engage in conversation, and depending on the energy level, if it's positive or negative, I just go with the flow.
If you could give everybody in the United States one message about their First Amendment rights, what would you want to tell them?
First Amendment's probably the most important one because it's the first. And don't take it for granted because, not many countries in the world have the freedoms that we do.
Can you please tell me about your most viewed video? And you can walk me step by step of what happens.
Sure. I would say the most viewed video that comes to recollection took place at a church a couple years ago. It was on Father's Day weekend. I was documenting, as I normally do, along the sidewalk. A couple individuals from the church who I later found out one of them was the pastor. Came out to, hi, how's it going? What's going on out here kind of thing. And, I was selective on my answers and what I give, as I typically do so I don't spoil the integrity of the audit. After a few moments of conversation, they started expressing their concerns about, how there's been shootings at churches before in the past. And, I reassured them that, my camera shoots frames per second, it's not bullets. So there's nothing to worry about there. The second individual that was with the pastor, he got on the phone. They called police at that point and described, they're wearing a backpack, hat, sunglasses, and a mask. To address the mask issue, I wear that on occasion to create my privacy in public, since there's otherwise no expectation of it. If we want privacy, we got to create it. Police ended up coming out as one of the individuals I got on camera was bumping up into me, walking backwards along the sidewalk, as almost like a form of intimidation. So the police ended up coming out, had a word with them off camera, and I settled for an apology from the individual who bumped up against me versus pressing charges. Some of my audience didn't quite like that. They said that guy deserved to have charges pressed. His apology wasn't sincere, so on and so forth. But I would personally like to take the high ground if someone can realize their wrongs and what they did and, go from there. And because at a church they say, what would Jesus do, right?
I know some YouTube channels try to dox organizations or locations that didn't pass an audit. Do you do that, or do you have your audience just not contact the people who failed?
Well, actually, early on, I used to state what city I was in. I'd show the intersection. I'd call out the business or house of worship. But to protect my work, because there's been a lot of haters out there that actually do call the location and give them a heads up. Probably about 2 years ago, I stopped giving the location where I was at. It bothers some people, but some understand. I tell my audience, hey, if you see the name of a business in the background or something, or if you feel they didn't do a good job, and if you want to call them, that's at your own discretion. I don't encourage any threats of violence or acts of violence towards anyone. So if you decide to call them, you're on your own.
Tell me some general misconceptions there are about First Amendment auditors.
Misconceptions is what I hear a lot is that we're ex-convicts. I've thankfully never been placed in handcuffs, never been to jail, knock on wood, hopefully that never happens. That's not my goal. My goal is to be out there and exercise my freedom and document what I can see in public. But I know some auditors that I've seen on YouTube do have an arrest record. If it's for the cause, they'll go sit a couple days in jail, so be it, but who knows whatever their other issues they got. Everyone's got their own, journey that we're going on.
So, have you had any rough encounters with police where maybe they are not educated about your right to film in public, and how have those encounters gone? I
have had some encounters with police where they haven't really pressed it further than asking for my name or my ID. And I had one officer one time that stands out outside of a bank. He says, well, can I see your ID? And I told him, the same thing. Well, can I see yours? And he goes, well, it's got my department on it. And I said, no, I want to see your driver's license. But it shows my address, he says. And I said, well, that's funny because so does mine. So I've had instances like that, but not really any with police, getting forceful or threatening to put me in handcuffs. So thankfully that hasn't happened yet.
And how does the freedom of speech and freedom of the press go head to head with someone's right to privacy?
A lot of people sometimes will approach and say, you're invading my privacy out here, and I have to explain to them, well, you're out in the open, you can be seen from a public space where I'm standing. And I explain to them, like, if you want privacy, you got to maybe build a wall up so I can't see, or, you know, cover your face with hat and sunglasses and a mask, similar to what Michael Jackson did with his kids. I know a lot of people thought he was weird for that, but hey, he was protecting his kid's identity at the time.
And what about indoors, like public spaces indoors, like a DMV or a post office? Do people have the right to privacy in those locations?
Well, there's been some confusion on Poster 7 at the post office, which is the rules and regulations. It's interpreted differently from different people, stating that, you know, we have the right to record in publicly accessible areas at the discretion of the postal master. Oftentimes the postmaster is not at that location. And so, you know, the employees will generally say, well, you know, yeah, you can record here as long as you don't obstruct business and, you know, disrupt anything going on. For myself, I usually just stand peacefully in the corner, maybe documenting people coming in or out. I'll go buy a stamp on occasion to conduct some business and test how the postal employees, you know, interact with the public in that sort of way.
Do people ever complain to YouTube about their privacy rights, like try to get your videos taken down?
Sometimes people complain about their privacy on YouTube. At first I used to respond to YouTube and state that I'm on a public sidewalk, you know, recording freely. But at the end of the day, we all got to remember that the social media platforms aren't a traditional public forum. You know, they have their rules and regulations and guidelines when we all sign up for the platform that we have to ultimately abide by. And if I do, you know, get a privacy complaint, then I'll go back and blur their face or blur out any information that I need to and go from there. It's, you know, 50-50 shot, but it's worth taking that shot. And thankfully it's not like a copyright strike. It doesn't affect my channel negatively. But I'll have to sometimes go in and blur out an object or a face to, you know, to comply with, you know, the request. And sometimes it's a hit or miss. Sometimes the video will get pulled regardless. Sometimes it'll stay up. So it's a chance worth taking, I think.
What's the difference between a First Amendment auditor and like a paparazzi? Like, are there similarities?
The difference between a First Amendment auditor and a paparazzi, I would say that for myself, I'm not as aggressive as a paparazzi, because sometimes I've seen, well, they'll step onto maybe private property or onto the grass area to get that shot over the fence maybe. You know, I'll try to, you know, be respectful of boundary lines and where I can and can't go.
Is it legal to film private property from a public vantage point?
As far as I know, to my knowledge, it's perfectly legal to record anything you can see from that public sidewalk or public, you know, public space. You know, if you want that privacy in your house, then the suggestion would be to close your blinds, because if I can see you through your window, it's not private.
Awesome. If you had one message to give to everybody in the world related to like what you do and what's important to you, your values, what would you want to say?
I would just like to tell everyone out there that if you have the freedoms, exercise them, because you never know if they'll be stripped away from you, as we've seen in other countries. It's important that, you know, we have these freedoms and, you know, enjoy that free life that we have.